Hi, good afternoon, good morning in some parts of the country, and welcome. I'm JD, I'm the Director of Programs and Scholarships here at the Pat Tillman Foundation. I'm joined with my colleague Tina, and welcome. This is actually a first. It's the first time we have done something live on the web, just to be able to provide information about what we think is a really wonderful opportunity. And it's an opportunity to talk about how one could go applying for the Pat Tillman Foundation scholarship, as well as a broad array of opportunities that are associated with that particular application. Again, I'm JD. I am the Director of Programs and Scholarships here at the Pat Tillman Foundation, and I found my way here into the Tillman Scholar community by means of 20 years in the Army. I'm recently retired from the United States Army. And whenever I was looking for opportunities to continue my own service after hanging up a uniform, I found a wonderful community that is focused very much on service. It's focused on scholarship and some wonderful values that focus in again on those two elements. It focuses in on impact and to be quite honest, it focuses in on humble leadership at the same time. Once I saw that community, I really became infatuated, and I'm glad to be here with you today.
Hi, I'm Tina Bruni. I'm the Scholarships Manager with the Foundation. I manage all things scholarship related. I've been with the Foundation for 3.5 years, but had the privilege to work with them for 2 years prior to that. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for joining us. This is our first time doing it, like we said. So if we run into any technical difficulties, we apologize, but bear with us. We'll work through it. Thank you.
Right. We are committed to fight through whatever friction that the internet might be able to provide us today. But at the same point in time, we're here to answer your questions. And before getting into some of those questions, I just want to offer sort of 5 points of just general advice. And that advice applies to applying for the Pat Tillman Scholarship. I think, to be quite frank, that advice applies to almost any scholarship. But again, there are 5 points. And very quickly, the first point is know what you're applying for. And I think in our case, at the heart of the matter, and at the end of the day, what a Tillman Scholar applicant is really asking to be a part of is a vibrant community of like-minded leaders that are committed to making an impact in this world. That is, if you're not applying for that, look somewhere else. If that is what you're interested and passionate about, this is the place to be. Now, the second point that I would like to emphasize is to visit our website. Look at the videos that are actually within this YouTube channel. They are compelling, they are persuasive, but they also highlight what you're applying for. And that is a very, very important aspect. And beyond our YouTube channel, just our own website. Our website can very much provide a wide array of information. It has our impact report, which again describes what we are about as a foundation and as a community of scholars, like-minded and remarkable military veterans and spouses. And all of those things, I think, are really important to establish the context of really what you're applying for. The third piece, and it's a part of that website as well, is read or frequently asked questions. Obviously, today we'll spend some time talking about questions you might have right now, but ask those questions. And you can ask them in this forum. You can use some of the email links that are on our website. The scholarships at pattillmanfoundation.org is the place to go to if you have a question about the substance of what it means to be a Tillman Scholar, or if you have a question about the process of how to apply to be a Tillman Scholar. My fourth piece is to talk to us. If you have an issue, if you have a question and it requires picking up a phone, do so. Please feel free to reach out to us. We are here very much to support and encourage those conversations. And my fifth point and piece of advice would also be to talk to a scholar. Ask a scholar in terms of what you might be able to learn about this foundation and what we have here today. Now, a couple of other things that I think what we might be able to go forward and do is very much focus on some of the different sort of misperceptions that someone might have just about our application. And even if you just follow some of that general advice, I think if somebody looks at our website, you can see some impressive backstories as well as some inspirational plans for the future. And we'll actually spend just a couple of minutes here going through just a few just a few of those questions. Tina, if you're ready, I think we can sort of address some of those. So whenever I first became really familiar with the organization, I was struck. I mean, there are Tillman scholars across the breadth of every field of human endeavor. There are astronauts, there are lawyers, there are doctors. I think a common question that we will sometimes bump into is a frank one. What I'm doing might not be out of this world, literally, in terms of what I think its impact might be. What would your advice be to a scholar or an applicant that's asking that question?
We want everybody to apply, all fields, all demographics, all ages, of all of those sorts, because we are building we don't want a class of 60 MBAs. We want a class of MBAs, lawyers, doctors, yes, but we also want those fine arts, the chefs, the I forgot what I was going to say, but we are building a diverse network of Tillman scholars. So yes, I encourage each and every one of you to apply. And unless you're applying, we can't choose them. We can't choose everybody in all those fields unless you aren't applying. So please put in your application.
Right, and I think another key thing to look at, and those that might not have started the application process yet, is really the mechanics of everything gets down to actually a couple of essays, right? And I think the true balance of what you're trying to achieve in those essays is probably a balance between authenticity in terms of the path you've been on and the path you want to pursue in the future. I think it's a combination of that authenticity with a degree of clarity in terms of the impact area you want to achieve something in. And then the third piece to balance within that is passion, right? So authenticity, clarity of purpose, and passion, I think, are really, really important aspects to be able to address in your application. And that would also be, I think, just a broad piece of advice that we could offer. Tina, when you think about that in terms of the application itself, and if somebody's trying to convey that, what have you seen with some of the different applications and questions that you've had of the best way to approach that in terms of the essays, what those essays look like, and their impact?
So my first, piece of advice in writing your essays is, take the most time in writing your essay. Don't rush through our application and, it's not getting it done the quickest, gets to the finish line first. It's taking your time and putting forth the most effort into your essays. Your application at any given point, depending on where you, land in the selection process, can be read by up to 29 reviewers. So how do you capture that attention of all 29 reviewers is through your essays. That's the first, point that the reviewers are going to get to know you, know what you're working on, and where your impact's going to be in the future. I always strongly encourage all applicants to have no less than 3 people who know you proof your essays. They're going to know you, know what you're working on. They're going to be the ones who are going to fill in and be like, you might have forgotten this, or did you think about this? So those are always, key points, having people help proofread your essays.
No, I think that's a great point too. And one of the things I think Tina just mentioned there that's really important is a series of conversations, right, of people that know you very, very well. And I'm curious, again, some of your thoughts in terms of how that same principle of talking with people that know an applicant well, how does that fit into another requirement of the application itself in terms of the recommender in that piece?
Yeah, good question. We prefer not to have immediate family members, writing your character recommendation. Surely there has to be plenty of people out there that that you've worked with, write your character recommendation. It's not the person's title per se, it's what they're going to say about you. Who knows you best? Who knows what you're working on again? Who knows where your impact is going to be in the future? And they're going to answer 3 short questions in 100 words or less. It's not writing a letter of recommendation. So they're not going to, write out a letter and submit it. You're going to enter in the person's name and email. They're going to get an email from us and then answer those 3 short questions. Again, choosing someone who knows you, knows what you're working on, and where your impact will be in the future.
No, I think that's great. And we have about 20 minutes left. And so actually what we're going to start to do is transition to a couple of questions. Some of the questions, as you can probably see, are coming in on the chat board. We also had a couple of questions that were emailed to us earlier today. One of those actually was the question of, what do Tillman scholars really value about the community and about being a Tillman scholar? And to be quite frank, it is that essence of a community. Recently, we took a look, and right now there's just shy of 600 Tillman scholars spread out throughout the world, doing a number of different things. And when queried, they responded that it was actually this network and a sense of community of like-minded individuals that they really valued the most. To provide mutual support, whether it is in school, a series of transitions that anyone experience as they move from uniform or uniform service to a student, and then from a student to an entrepreneur or an engineer or an artist, or any of the wonderful things that our scholars are doing. But they come back to this sense of community and the network and the opportunities that sort of come from that. And I think that's, again, a very, very important piece. And I would also direct folks to some of the video footage that we have of serving Tillman scholars that are on this site itself, that are answering that very question. That is really the best place to sort of take a look at it. I'm looking at a couple of the other questions that are here. We have one question actually is, what's the age of the oldest Tillman scholar? Which is a great question, and it runs about a generation or so, right,
yeah.
Tina?
So I don't know the exact age, but I believe it's in the 50 age range is our oldest Tillman scholar. And again, we're looking for diversity within our Tillman scholars. We don't, want a cohort of 30-year-old somethings. We want scholars from all ages, all genders, all demographics.
Right. I think that's those are very, very good points. And there's something to learn, right? And again, that's what another strength, I think, of a very diverse community that we're able to have is we will have specific venues beyond just the selection process where scholars get together. In fact, that was another question that was emailed to us earlier. And there's a couple of different opportunities. An incoming group of scholars will meet here in Chicago. That's where our foundation's headquarters is located for a long weekend in July. And that's an ability to really integrate that new arriving scholar into this broader community. But we also have a number of different regional events. In fact, this Saturday we'll be at Columbia University, which is one of our university partners, with New York City area and that greater metropolitan area of the scholars that are there. And so several times a year, we'll have a number of regional events. We have volunteer scholars that are known as regional captains that serve not only as ambassadors of the foundation, but they also will organize local scholars for either a service project, an opportunity to have an event, to see a lecture, to have a social function after that academic or intellectual event, just again to maintain a vibrant community. So there are a number of opportunities beyond that. Another very interesting question that has sort of popped up, just looking at the chat, is how much does a lack of awards during service might affect you? And so I'm just pointing out that, say, if your service is potentially cut short due to a medical board or a medical retirement or something along those lines, and someone might not have gotten a chance to earn a lot of awards, how does that fall into the basic application process?
We review all applications as a whole. So they're taking in all, pieces of your application, your character recommendation, your essays, your awards and honors definitely fit in there. However, that's not going to be a determining factor. We have many scholars who have, never been deployed. So that's not, that's not a deciding factor on our reviewers' end. We look at the application as a whole.
Yeah, and I think it's that comprehensive look. Again, those are the qualities, and I fully acknowledge it's difficult to paint a comprehensive picture of yourself in 2 essays of 400 words or less in a resume, right? I mean, that's a reality, but that is really the challenge that I think is before folks. And my antidote to that challenge and advice would again be those points of revision, the points that Tina brought up earlier. I think are very, very important piece of things. And this notion that we are looking, and sometimes up to those 29 different sets of eyes are looking at these applications comprehensively, that even boils down to sometimes discharge status. I saw that was another question that sort of just factored through here. Again, if it is something, if it's a general discharge, something along those lines, we would encourage you to apply. And again, we will look at things comprehensively. That by no means is an automatic disqualifier along those lines.
Right.
Tina, any other thoughts
Yeah,
on
a
that?
GPA, that's another common question. I don't, my GPA going in, into the selection processes isn't as high as I would, like it to be. Is that going to disqualify me? And the answer is no. We understand that, GPAs are vary in range, and you might have been in school 20 years ago, fresh out of high school, and that GPA, very possibly could be lower. And so we definitely, don't, that's not a disqualifier, in the application process. However, there is a minimum GPA that you must, meet each semester once chosen as a Tillman Scholar. So for the application process, no, there's not a minimum GPA.
Right. We had another question about military spouses, actually, in terms of just the general ratio of how many scholars in a particular given year are typically spouses.
Well, that ranges each year, also depending on the application pool, because each year the pool changes. So in general, it's about a fifth.
Yeah.
About a fifth of the class, 10.
Yeah.
And so, again, that ranges, and that's also actually another big question I've been getting recently is, in how is a spouse application reviewed separate, differently from, someone who has served. And, spouses are serving alongside of, their military family member. We acknowledge the service that they're providing their family and their communities. So, I strongly encourage all spouses out there to apply. Please.
Yeah, and also a point that we were very conscious of in terms of some of the different selection committees, those 29 people that collectively and cumulatively are looking at applications. They also have a wide array of different perspectives. So some of those 29 are actually serving current Tillman Scholars. Others are people that are very familiar with the foundation, our story, with Pat's legacy, and we're very conscious to make sure that we have backgrounds within those people that are reviewing that mirror this community that we are asking to apply in this community that we're building. So there are a number of spouses that will be a part of that selection process as well, just to make sure that we are able to have a variety of perspectives as we're making some of those decisions. Couple of other great questions. I'm enrolled in a master's degree part-time. Can you apply under those conditions?
You would need to be enrolled full-time. One of our eligibility requirements is you must be enrolled full-time, seeking a bachelor's degree or above at a U.S.-based institution. Yeah. So you must be full-time. So if you're currently part-time, you would need to be full-time for the program. So beginning with this fall semester, you would need to be enrolled full-time. Yeah. Another, common question is, do I need to be attending a university partnered school to be able to apply? And the answer is no. We do have two separate tracks between our university partner track and our at-large track. But there is no requirement as long as you're attending a U.S.-based institution.
Right. And again, I think another question that came right after that one, and you already addressed it, of talking about an associate's degree. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, associate's degree does not apply. It has to be a bachelor's degree or higher. And then on the full-time piece, we will go with the determination of the institution that you're enrolled in. So if your college or university says that you are full-time, with whatever math they have to do to come up with that determination, that's the same determination that we do as well, just to simplify that interpretation. Another
really big question that we get a lot is, I haven't been accepted to my university yet. Can I still apply? And the answer is yes. You can still apply for this process. You have to have been accepted by the April 1st deadline. So you would go ahead and submit your application and list out all of your institutions that you're applying to. You might be waitlisted, or some you're still waiting on acceptance. But you would need to send in an email to scholarships at Pat Tillman Foundation by April 1 with an acceptance to at least one of the universities.
Right. And again, that's another important piece where we can't emphasize enough the importance of over communication with us. And just so you know, those emails are going to Tina. So she is focused and dedicated to be able to maintain that communication throughout the entire process. Now, we got another really great question, actually. If a student becomes a scholar toward the end of their undergrad, does that support continue to graduate school? That's actually a great piece. The scholarship itself, in terms of what the foundation will be paying for either tuition or other associated costs, to include living expenses with going to school for a particular degree, that portion of what we offer would end with the receipt of that particular degree. So if it's in your last year of your bachelor's degree, once you get that bachelor's of science, bachelor's of arts, that's when that portion of specific scholarship support would stop. Likewise, if it's the last year of a master's, last year of a PhD, JD, MBA, whatever degree producing program that's there. What continues for life are other aspects of what the foundation does. And I'd really like to emphasize that from our perspective, it is very important in terms of our understanding of our relationship with Tillman Scholars is that it is far more than just a scholarship. It is the invitation and the active participation in the community, a community that's focused in our core values of service, of scholarship, of humble leadership, and of impact. And then likewise, we also offer professional development opportunities, which are designed to assist Tillman Scholars if they're still in school, or more importantly, after they have completed their degrees. And those exist really in the form of mini grants, in which if a scholar wants to go and present at South by Southwest, we will help them by uniting and empowering them by providing mini grants upwards of sometimes $1,000 that can be able to reimburse travel expenses, registration fees, things along those lines. So all of those activities and all of that support does continue, and it will continue in perpetuity for as long as someone remains a scholar in good standing.
And we always say, once a Tillman Scholar, always a Tillman Scholar. So
right. Now, another great question is, again, someone had read online that we are a merit-based scholarship. And they're asking the question, how do we sort of adjudicate or assess is probably the best term. Mm-hmm. How do we assess merit?
Yeah. So we are definitely 100% a merit-based scholarship. Financial need would come into once we select our Tillman Scholar class, we then look towards the amount for your scholarship. So the scholarship could vary depending on the financial need, but solely our scholarship, we choose our scholars based off of merit each year.
Right, and really from our perspective, it's fascinating to see the ongoing conversations, again, of multiple perspectives and of multiple people along the stages that come back down to those core values, right? More than anything, whenever you peruse our website, you can see those values at the forefront. And they are very, very much focused in on this notion of service, scholarship, humble leadership, and impact. That, more than anything, are the things that I would continue to remind everyone is what those assessments and what those discussions are going on. Had another very, very interesting question of how can one carry on the Tillman legacy, either if they are a part of this community or if they don't get awarded that scholarship. I think that's another very interesting piece, and clearly what we're looking for is one and anyone that's willing to engage in a number of different communities, focused in on those same very values, and that's what I would encourage when you look at different things. One of the key events of the foundation actually is a fun run that occurs down in Tempe, Arizona. It's Pat's Run. Again, you'll see a lot of discussion on that on our website. But even if you're not in Tempe, Arizona, we have a number of different honor runs, which again are advertised, and you can find out about them through our website. But that's a great way to be able to contribute to and learn more about this community. And when I say learning more, and it's actually, I think that's a really great question to ask, because at the end of the day, when you simply do the arithmetic behind it, it's a very, very hard cut. We'll start, and we'll usually have around in between 2,000 and 2,500 completed applications. Out of that number, we are winnowing that down to 60 Tillman Scholars. That's about a 2.5% selection rate. That is a tough cut. When you think about other prestigious academic scholarships, the Truman Scholarship, right, is as selective of what we're talking about here. But what's really interesting, I think, about a lot of our population, and Tina, you could potentially talk to this, is that a lot of our Tillman Scholars are repeat applicants, right?
Yes, I strongly encourage all applicants, if you've applied in the past, to continue to apply. As long as you're eligible, you can continue to apply. Of our Tillman Scholars, of our 60 Tillman Scholars each year, the past 3 years, a third of them have applied 2 or more years. So I definitely strongly encourage you to, put your hat back in the ring this year. If you've applied in the past, again, working on those essays, having, several people review them, give you some feedback. Things have changed this year versus last year for you, I'm sure. Your things may have, anything may have changed. So definitely, pull them things out and retweak them and get your application in.
Right. Another great question, and it goes back to this notion of military spouses. How can military spouses stand out among so many impactful active duty and veterans? Is it recommended for spouses to highlight our own civilian or military contributions? Again, I would come back to that point I made earlier about any essay. I think any essay is effective if it is first and foremost is authentic. If it then also has an important aspect of clarity to it in terms of the impact you want to achieve. And then finally, balancing that authenticity and clarity with a degree of passion. And I got it. I agree. I mean, if you want both an exercise in inspiration as well as probably feeling inadequate about yourself, spend some time reading some of those bios that are on the webpage. But the more I think about the community, the more I see that community in action, the thing I would very much emphasize is when I look at the backstories of Tillman Scholars, those backstories are impressive. Oftentimes, yes, there's going to be acts of valor, extensive service that's going on there. But as impressive as that is, what's truly inspirational about Tillman Scholars is the story of a better future that they want to write. And that, again, is an aspect of that balance between authenticity, clarity, and passion, which would be my advice to a spouse or any applicant that very much wants their essays and their application to stand out. Another interesting question: how likely is an applicant to be selected if their degree or career focus is not human-centric? That is, what are the chances for someone who studies biology or engineering that's not directly focused on people?
Well, my first thought would be Emily Junkins.
Yeah.
Definitely not. Specifically, but absolutely. Again, it takes the what's our saying? The chemist and.
One of my I'm started off with jokes of saying a doctor, a veterinarian, and a microbiologist walk into a bar, right? But in this particular case, venue aside, that is what we're trying to do with a community, right? That a lawyer needs to be able to listen to a physicist, like a nuclear physicist. Again, Tina and I were able to have lunch just 2 weeks ago with a Tillman Scholar that is working on quantum physics. Again, dinner a few weeks prior with a Tillman Scholar. In fact, it was the one Tina referenced, Emily. Her video is actually on this YouTube page where she talks about how her research into microbiology is a key piece of what is going on at the same time.
But just to kind of add just a tidbit to that, but what we're trying to say is that it takes all, when I see Tillman Scholars in a room together of all different fields, and they're coming up with things together and working on things together because of their different fields. That's what we're trying to build. Those are the things, that I want to emphasize to you, is that every field, every demographic should be applying so that we can continue to build what our goal is.
Yeah. Now we are almost out of time, so we're going to focus in on actually one last question. What we'll be able to do is we'll keep some of the chat open, and then we'll provide some responses to some of those other questions. But if for whatever reason that one of your questions was not addressed specifically, again, please just do a quick copy and paste of that question from the chat board to Scholarships at, and we will get an answer for that. But I think the last question we'll actually sort of bring up is one of process as well, and it goes with the recommender. One of the absolute last things we want to have happen is, as midnight Pacific time on the 28th of February approaches, that an applicant has their entire application complete and they're waiting on the recommender. Tina, if you could sort of explain that process, simply because I think from an applicant's perspective, you input recommender information and then it goes into the internet and ones and zeros and something comes out. What is that? What
happens
does that look like?
Every year. So all tasks on your application taskbar must be complete. They must turn green and be complete before you can hit submit. So you're going to send out that task for your recommender. It's going to show pending orange. Once your recommender has completed the recommendation, you're going to get an email that states the recommendation has been complete. You must go back into your application and actually hit submit. All the tasks must be green. They show green before you can hit submit. So please make sure you go back into your application to submit. I would hate for you not to get that submitted thinking that it's an automatic thing where no, you have to verify the information and go in and submit. That's a great question.
Yeah, it is. And again, we are out of time. As I mentioned earlier, and as some of the additional instructions that were there, please, if we did not get to one of your questions, please reach out to us at scholarships at Pat Tillman Foundation. We will get an answer back to that.
Yeah. I just want to say, just be patient because I am the only one manning that email address and I get, the emails in. I get lots of them. So just be patient. I will get back to you. It may take, a couple days sometimes now as we're fully into the application. So the application is open. We're closing at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time on February 28th. So yeah, if you have any questions along the way, please email me at scholarships@Pat Tillman Foundation.
Right. And the last point that I'll add with, and it's actually, I'll use an aspect of the actual application process to highlight a broader point. And early on in the process, and you might have asked this question, why do I have to read this story of Pat Tillman before moving on? And a part of that is a conscious decision on our part is to help everyone understand what they're really applying for. In that story, those 4 or 5 paragraphs that describe the legacy of a remarkable human being that embodied these values of service, of scholarship, of being a lifelong learner, of humble leadership, but of an impactful life. Those are important pieces. And I would encourage you, as you either revise your essays or you're in that process, to go back to our website, to look at those stories, to look at a lot of the video footage that we've placed on this YouTube channel, to really understand what you're applying for. And we encourage everyone to do so. We are not in a numbers game to max out the number of applications that we have, but what we are in the business of building an impactful community that one day collectively, as Marie Tillman herself says, is going to be a force to be reckoned with and a force to change the world. And again, if it's anything based off your interest and engagement here, those are great signs. And we greatly look forward to reading your application here in a few weeks. Thanks and good luck.
Thank you.